All right, let's jump right in. Today we're going to be looking at a really fascinating cognitive model from a guy named Dennis Verhaage. It's called if/MITS, and it might just change how you think about learning, all by starting with a very simple, almost childlike idea. So let's start with the big question that kicks this whole thing off. What if logic wasn't this rigid, scary set of rules you had to memorize? What if it was actually a toy? Something you could pick up, play with, and just explore out of pure curiosity. And that's where the name comes from, which is just brilliant, right? If MITS. So on one level, MITS is a pretty complex decision-making algorithm. It's all about finding the best path through a bunch of choices. But, and here's the clever part, in Dutch, MITS literally means toy. So you've got this double meaning baked right in. A powerful logical engine is presented as a playful tool from the very beginning, all driven by the if of conditional thinking. Okay, so how does this idea of playful logic actually work in practice? Well, it all starts with tackling a really common problem. How do you turn abstract ideas, just words on a page, into a clear visual map that your brain can actually navigate? The foundation for all of this is something called mermaid syntax. Now, if you've ever dabbled in coding or technical documentation, you might have run into this. But honestly, you don't need to be a coder to get it. It's this wonderfully simple language that lets you create some pretty complex diagrams just by typing out a few lines of plain text. The process itself is just so elegant. First, you write out your ideas, you define your concepts, you say how they're connected to each other, and then bam, the system does the heavy lifting and automatically turns that text into a clean, easy-to-read flowchart. And here's where you can really see it happen. On the left, you've got that simple code, and on the right, you get the structured visual output. This is the whole point. It's a bridge between abstract text and our brain's natural ability to think spatially. For anyone out there who's a visual thinker, this is an absolute game changer. It turns a flat wall of text into a mental map you can actually walk through. But listen, this whole visualization tool, that's just the surface level. It's all in service of a much bigger, much deeper idea about how our minds actually work. A philosophy that Verhaage calls the prismatic mind. I love this metaphor, prismatic cognition. It's this idea that our thinking isn't just one straight linear process. It's more like white light hitting a prism. It refracts, right? It splits into this whole beautiful spectrum of different interacting layers that, when they come together, create real depth and complexity. So this model breaks that spectrum down into a few key layers. You've got the visual layer, that's your images and your mental maps. Then there's the symbolic layer, which is all about metaphors and language. And finally, you have the cognitive layer, your pure logic and sequencing. The big idea here is that you're not truly understanding something deeply unless you get all of those layers working together at the same time. Okay, so this brings us to the real engine of the whole if-MIST system. It's this powerful partnership between two core concepts, the toy and the image. Let's unpack this, because it's super important. The image is your big, abstract, symbolic idea. The example Verhaage uses is the blue jeans philosophy, this notion that your old, faded jeans carry your memories and your history. It's a powerful metaphor, right? But you can't touch it. That's where the toy comes in. It's the concrete, physical thing you can actually get your hands on and manipulate. This could be something totally physical, like a set of Lego bricks, or it could be something conceptual, like the MITS algorithm itself, which lets you play with different outcomes. And here's the magic. They're not separate things. They create this amazing feedback loop. Your imagination, which is sparked by that symbolic image, guides how you play with the toy. But then, in turn, that physical act of playing actually deepens your understanding of the abstract idea. It becomes this incredible, virtuous cycle of learning, which the model argues is especially powerful for a developing mind. So you might be asking, where does that MITS algorithm we talked about fit into all this? Well, MITS is the toy in this system. It's the decision engine. It's the if operator that provides the structured, logical rules for you to play with as you explore the big ideas represented by the image. It basically gives your play a purpose and a direction. So when you start to put all these different pieces together, the visual language, the whole prismatic theory, and this toy and image duo, you end up with something that's way more than just a neat learning trick. You really get a system, a blueprint for life. In fact, Verhey maps this whole system onto a model of adolescent development he calls the dramaturgy of development. It kicks off with innocence, where you're just engaging with these big symbolic images. Then you move into transformation, where you use hands-on, tactile play, something like Lego therapy, for example, to really manipulate those ideas. And finally, you arrive at integrity, where you're using a structured tool like MITS to make conscious, deliberate decisions. So what's the end game here? It's really about building a whole cognitive ecosystem. It's not about just learning one fact or one concept. The goal is to equip the mind with the full toolkit, the symbolic, the physical, and the logical, that it needs to navigate the incredible complexities of life. And so we're left with this really fascinating question to chew on. By framing a seriously complex algorithm as a simple toy, this whole model makes a powerful case for playful discovery. And it makes you wonder, how would our approach to learning, to problem solving, to everything change if all of our tools were also our toys?